But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
It is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement?
Everything erupted in an earth-shaking lawsuit so colossal, it didn't merely jolt The View, it hammered the whole media universe. Charlie Kirk had no patience left. He unapologetically unleashed a booming $100 million legal grenade, and the stunned daytime television castle quivered in outright, breathless, absolute terror. This was no flashy PR gimmick or clickbait headline chasing a trend on Twitter. Kirk was finished watching his students get smeared by smug hosts treating slander like sport again, convinced they could spit any insult and stroll away untouched by justice. So, at Kirk's Turning Point USA Youth Summit, more than 5,000 energized students eagerly from every corner gathered to soak up fiery conservative voices.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, and if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do, and no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge. And on that bridge, they'll see RFK. They'll see Elon Musk.
These kids weren't villains or radicals. They were teens bursting with excitement, flying in simply to join something electric, political, and truly undeniably powerful. So how did The View react? They didn't cover the event, they trashed it. They unleashed reckless accusations, hinting Kirk's teen summit brushed shoulders with danger. Picture being 16, flipping on national TV, and hearing that your big trip suddenly painted you as some shadowy criminal for all your shocked classmates watching. That's when Charlie Kirk thundered, "Enough?" He was used to taking hits, but these weren't casual jabs, they were branding blameless teenagers with lifelong labels. He vowed on the spot that this vicious smear would not glide past unchallenged this time, under his determined watch. Worse still, it required a looming lawsuit to make The View even consider a sorry. No remorse, no reflection, pure old-school terror of the courtroom. Kirk spelled it out. They didn't retreat because conscience tugged. They did it because lawsuit lightning scared them stiff. Hard. When reporters asked Kirk whether he'd accept their reluctant apology, he swung the focus back to the real victims. "It's not about me," he insisted. "Do our students accept it?" Instantly, the narrative rebooted. This fight was never ego. It was a crusade for justice aimed straight at tomorrow's leaders and their rightful voices. The View had long mocked anyone holding different beliefs, yet now their masks were slipping, revealing smug, careless hosts chasing clicks over truth. Kirk barreled toward them with every legal weapon ready, and stepping into formation right behind him, podcast titan Joe Rogan, itching to blast the studio walls with blunt honesty for the world. Then Joe Rogan kicked through the metaphorical door and scorched that set. He offered no glaze. He offered zero politeness. He tore into The View with searing candor, naming their faults exactly as they'd grown loud, reckless, and painfully predictable for years.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis.
Rogan didn't merely judge the program, he leveled it with laser-sharp ferocity. They always bring on one conservative woman just to yell at her, he declared, and he nailed the truth. From Meghan McCain to reality show guests, anyone brave enough to push back was quickly muted and mocked. But this round wasn't only about conservative guests getting cut off, it was about reality being stomped flat for pure spectacle. Rogan had reached his limit. He locked arms with Kirk and pulled the curtain on the sneaky tricks hiding behind bright lights and canned cheers. Then Sunny Hostin committed the cardinal blunder. She tried to humiliate Rogan live on air. She boldly insisted with a perfectly straight face that Joe Rogan believed in dragons. Dragons! Blurted across national television. That's how wildly she flailed to silence him. She overlooked one huge detail: Rogan kept receipts. The footage she cited was harmless banter, a relaxed chat with a wildlife expert. Yet instead of clarifying that, she spun it into a savage character hit right in front of the cameras. She even proclaimed, "We're ABC News, trust us, not Joe Rogan," and doubled down with the absurd dragon punchline. Rogan's reply: pure laughter, but beneath that chuckle burned a blaze and he blasted the airwaves with facts. Her remark didn't just miss it, spotlighted every flaw festering inside The View. Rogan refused to drop it. He reminded millions that Sunny Hostin isn't merely a talk show face, she's an attorney, a former federal prosecutor who should grasp how perilous careless words can be when beamed to a vast audience. Yet she hurled them anyway boldly. She should know better, Rogan thundered. She knows what defamation is, and she just handed Charlie Kirk's legal team a golden ticket. Suddenly, viewers realized this lawsuit wasn't a long shot. It might be an outright game changer. In an instant, The View landed in a nightmare. They were already staring at a lawsuit from one of the loudest conservative figures in America, and now the world's biggest podcaster was dismantling them sentence by sentence. This was no longer a scuffle, it was a full-blown media war. One camp boasted millions of devoted followers, lawyers on standby, and the weight of truth.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach.
I have no hate for Joy Behar. If I saw her, I'd give her a hug. I'd probably say the same thing about me if I was her. You're worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is fucking great, and Joe Rogan believes in dragons!
Rogan never hesitated to call it out over and over again. He ridiculed the whole stage show, labeling it pure theater masquerading as genuine dialogue. But the sharpest blows weren't the jokes, they were the truths hiding beneath them. Rogan highlighted the widening chasm separating legacy media from independent voices. He spoke aloud what millions already believed. The narrative no longer belongs to those old gatekeepers anymore at all. He laid it bare. The View embodies the creaky old order networks, filters, teleprompters, watchful gatekeepers. The fresh surge, podcasts, grassroots talkers, direct lines to listeners. That's why this instant counted so very much. This lawsuit wasn't merely about Charlie Kirk or Joe Rogan. It symbolized the downfall of a system convinced it could speak unfiltered trash forever and dodge payback. Now that creaking machine was being hauled before a judge, wailing and thrashing in rage. Rogan didn't just dismantle their reasoning, he spotlighted the hypocrisy powering their broadcast. They preach fairness, truth, and accountability, yet displayed none when they unleashed reckless slander upon thousands of innocent teens live for all the world to hear. He reminded viewers that these youths weren't pawns, they were bright teenagers sacrificing summer days to join a conference. Yet they were smeared on screen by personalities claiming they protect the youth, twisting courage into scandal for ratings daily. It was outrageous and the line had to be drawn. Kirk declared, "This fight isn't just about me. It belongs to every one of those 5,000 students." Rogan echoed fiercely, "This battle is about power and exposing whoever dares to misuse it for their own selfish gain without remorse ever." They hammered one truth home: this case isn't about gagging the press. It's about defending reality. When a billion-dollar network smears people live on air, accountability must follow, or the microphone becomes a weapon instead of a beacon for the public. And this wasn't a slow leak scandal. It was pure wildfire roaring everywhere.
But with that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, you know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. And, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's a bizarre show. I think the way before you start, I think the way you described it is brilliant, and the way we should all look at it. Of course, you're going to see race. The idea of being colorblind is ridiculous, but treat everybody. They're just human beings. Yeah. Everybody's just individuals. That's a very strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, you know, it's interesting because I think Sunny is very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured. Right. You know, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, who are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart, but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course.
You know.
They do everything with an agenda.
Each time The View tried to retract their reckless remarks, they appeared even more guilty. Every apology felt like cold calculation, never a genuine gesture of regret. Pressure kept climbing, cracks kept widening, and audiences saw straight through those stiff smiles and awkward jokes. Even the show's most faithful followers sensed the atmosphere had shifted, and absolutely not in a positive direction. Rogan's influence swelled, not through volume, but by voicing truths others whispered in fear. "They made this chaos," he publicly declared. Now they act like nothing occurred yet. That looming lawsuit loudly shouts the reality they desperately ignore today. Real fear swept the studio, not solely because of that eye-watering $100 million figure, but because of the future it signaled. A tomorrow where talk shows can't sling reckless smears without consequence. A tomorrow where truth finally seizes the microphone. Rogan was no longer offering commentary, he was spearheading a full-scale reckoning. He turned The View's sloppy cruelty into a glaring emblem of everything broken entirely inside today's ratings-hungry mainstream media machine for all. He hurled the tough question everyone dodged. Why can shows like this fling wild accusations without a shred of proof? The set responded with silence, and that chilling hush exposed every guilty secret instantly. Charlie Kirk's lawsuit morphed into more than paperwork. It became a thunderous message, a warning shot aimed at any TV host who imagines a camera grants limitless license to spew accusations without any trace of proof. Smack in the center of that firestorm stood Sunny Hostin, a lawyer, a former prosecutor, someone who should know better now, drowning beneath the backlash she sparked herself with one reckless on-air segment.
Not really their audience. Their audience is a group of people they bring in to watch television shows. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen audiences before for TV shows, but a lot of them are paid. They're paid to be there. So, because they have to guarantee that there's going to be people there. So there's services that you hire. And when a show gets really, really popular, you know, like Letterman or something like that, obviously it has its own fan base. Right. Those people will try to get tickets before anybody else does. And in that case, they probably don't need to use a service anymore. They just get actual fans. But arguably, like, the fans, the real fans of The View that are like, oh, these ladies are on point, most of those people can't leave the house. Like, they're probably immobile.
Right.
Rogan hammered the warning again and again, not to mock her, but to spotlight how disastrously far big media has crashed from its duty to truth. The weight of your words, he insisted, so why pretend they carry no consequence? Answer that right now. And now they face judgment not on Twitter, not in some raging comment thread, but inside a real courtroom where every line is sworn. The stakes stay lethal, and nothing matters more than raw, provable truth today. Rogan refused to relent. He busted the charade. "This is their racket," he roared. "They wrap opinion in faux fact, fling allegations like confetti, and pray the glittering chaos blinds everyone to the toxic wreck left behind." Yet the public was wide awake. Kirk's lawsuit smashed open a doorway that may never seal again. If he triumphs, this case stamps a landmark declaring defamation is not free speech, and trashing reputations on live air carries a brutal price for all time. Newsrooms everywhere watched, jaws locked, because if The View collapses, a new epic begins where every syllable spoken on daytime TV sits one careless moment from a clerk's stamp and a subpoena sliding across the anchor desk that day. For the first time in ages, legacy media trembled, not before a senator, not at slipping ratings, but before a rising generation shouting, "Enough!" They refused to swallow lies and labels any longer, smashing complacency with a wave of righteous outrage that echoed through screens. That's why Rogan's dismantling cut so deep. It wasn't merely comedy, it was thunder. It grabbed listeners who tuned out of the static and yanked them back, handing them a reason to care once more. He didn't simply challenge Sunny Hostin, he turned her into a flashing warning. A previously esteemed legal commentator now snarled in scandal of her own design, all because she forgot microphones magnify more than words, they magnify ultimate accountability for the entire world daily. And The View, their polished smugness, their choreographed chaos, their echo hall applause, it all began to fracture. Because the truth has an unstoppable pulse, pushing through no matter how many smug giggles try to drown its heartbeat out for good measure. Even longtime defenders of the program suddenly started posing hard questions.
This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, "We are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons." So she by saying we should trust them because they're double checked by ABC News, and then making the stupidest fucking statement. Like you didn't listen to what I said.
Yeah.
You didn't listen to what the wildlife biologist, and that's only a part of what he said.
I can't believe
the other
Joy
part of what he
Behar
said
didn't
was
wait.
there was something before that where he was explaining encounters with giant reptiles. And then there's also, listen,
It doesn't make sense to me that a middle-aged woman could be dumb.
when you're worried about losing your job and you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of.
Why did they rush to judge so fast? Why target bright teenagers? Why mock instead of question? And why did remorse arrive only when sharp-suited lawyers stepped into the spotlight? Rogan never needed a glittering studio, scrolling script, or polished PR squad, just a microphone and the courage to slice through the spin. With every syllable, he shredded the shiny illusion The View had spent years stitching together for daytime viewers everywhere. Ultimately, this storm wasn't about Rogan, Kirk, or Hostin alone. It exposed a creaking system snaring itself in tangled lies. A machine sure it could smear anyone, anytime, then saunter away like yesterday's gossip never existed without facing a reckoning. But not on this round. This time, the target punched back. Truth found a voice roaring louder than canned studio laughter. And a towering $100 million lawsuit stopped being digits it transformed into a battle cry demanding unapologetic accountability for the wounded teens. While court filings pile up, one fact blazes clear: daytime TV will never look the same again. The View has morphed from cozy chatter into the battle-scarred emblem of a media war it never imagined would suddenly crash through its doors. And Joe Rogan? He didn't merely shatter the story, he scorched it to cinders, then handed back the ashes with a sly grin. Because whenever raw truth collides with bloated arrogance, truth triumphs, and this round, it roared victoriously for everyone.